Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. This is going to be the recording of the Polite Society Podcast, episode 675. Joining me today, Amanda Suffecool, fresh off her Eye on the Target radio show yesterday. By the way, Amanda, excellent show. And you've got a crack video producer, I got to tell you.
Yeah, he's on it.
Cracked video producer. Yes,
cracked.
I think 100%.
That could be that he's cracked as well.
Right.
Below Amanda is John Richardson. He's here almost every week. Only Guns and Money blog. And Rob Morse, of course, below me, Self-Defense Gun Stories and the Slow Facts blog and just about everywhere else on the internet. Let me go ahead and I got to get social media hooked up here. This is not like the Bullet where everything is right now and happens and is all pre-set up. Polite Society Podcast always has been first and foremost a podcast for listening to. And so we do a recording of the live show, and that's what goes out for podcasts. So, all right. I believe we are all connected. If you do want to comment on anything on the show, if we get it quickly and you're talking about what we're talking about, or it's funny, your comment will make it on the show. And the best way to do it is to comment on the Polite Society podcast feed, either on Facebook or on YouTube. So I think we're all set, guys. We are starting to get check-in comments already. Dana, our guy that helps with the DGUs on show notes, he's already checked in, and Spartan 6 is checked in. So I think we're ready to fly on my end. Are we ready to record on your guys' end?
Let's go.
All right. In that case, Masada Yub. In 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society Podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, Labor Day, September 4th, 2023. I'm Paul Lathrop, and I'm laboring to bring this show to you.
I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show we talk about the new proposed ATF rule that requires individuals who want to sell a firearm to go get an FFL.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about the permitless carry going into effect in Nebraska.
I'm Amanda Suffecool, and in one of our DGU stories, a robbery of a vape shop goes very wrong for the robbers. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 675 of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society Podcast starts right now. All right, it's Monday night. It's just after 7 o'clock in the Central Time Zone. That means it's time for another edition of the Polite Society Podcast. Rob, as I usually do, I'm going to ask you first, what have you been up to since the last time that you've been on Polite Society, man?
I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories. Tomorrow morning I get to, I guess it's Wednesday morning. Amanda and I get to record. I booked my rooms and my flights for AmCon, GRPC, and for a gun owners banquet in San Diego. I dry fired and I've started studying the FBI qual. I want to see how I do with that. John, how about you?
Rob, before we go to John, real quick, I want to the gun owners banquet in San Diego. That's known to some people in the industry, but not really widely. What happens there, man?
Well, they have an annual fundraising banquet. They get dressed up. Remember, this is San Diego, where for a long time you could not get a permit. Now you got to grind through the paperwork, but you can. Jokingly, among the people who attend, it's called Gun Prom. It's a great night.
Very, very cool. Okay, John, what's been up with you, man?
Well, it was a quiet week for me as we headed into the holiday weekend. We did not go anywhere because we really don't want to travel on holidays. I'm coming up on my first anniversary of being retired, which has been a good year. And I think both Rob and Amanda would agree with me that retirement can be a lot of fun as well as busy.
Yep.
Amanda?
Oh yeah, I've got the busy. We'll just say, since I was last on, I was in Tennessee for the pushback of the red flag laws that the governor asked for, and when he called a special legislative session for it, we were successful. They were not so successful. They closed the session without passing any additional anti-gun laws. Then I was off to Georgia to have a meeting and spend some time with firearms trainers Brian and Shelley Hill, and then headed home for 3 days, then off to Massachusetts to push back against their proposed bill HD 4420. It was a great time, and now I'm back home. So Paul, what about you?
Well, first of all, let me say, if you flew to these places, you'd have enough frequent flyer miles to go to the moon. You are always off somewhere. But
she's been off somewhere for a long time.
With the focus on off, right?
On my end, we are rushing towards GRPC and AMCON. Let me go to my calendar here. We're looking at just over 2 weeks. AMCON is the 22nd of this month, GRPC 23rd, 24th. And we are entering final preparations. There have been a lot of contact with speakers and changing schedules around to meet certain speakers' flight times when they come in. And trying to making sure that when everything goes off flawlessly and seamlessly. I got 3 hairs left right over here, and I'm sure by the time the weekend is up, they'll be gone. That's been all consuming for me. Let's see here. I want to remind everybody, and before we go to our first break, to go ahead and check out the Self-Defense Radio Network, all your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. As you can see there, we are down. There we go. We're down a few. We're down a few shows. We had, unfortunately, we had one of our podcasters pass away recently. So the Firearms Chat podcast is gone. But you can see we're up there, Eye on the Target Radio, Self-Defense, Gun Stories, Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, Riding Shotgun with Charlie. All kinds of good pro-freedom podcasts up there at sdrn.us. Check it out. You can listen right off the website, or the subscription information is there should you decide to subscribe. We're going to step away to our first break. When we come back, we've got that ATF news we need to talk about, and we will get to that right after we hear from ACLDN. Right back, right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership, and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right, we are back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Rob, you want to go ahead and let's take this first story about Dr. John Lott. You want to read that one?
Sure. Yeah. And I have to say, I am really impressed with Dr. Lott. He has been taking the FBI apart over their sloppy data. The FBI reported that there were 302 mass murders from 2014 to 2022, a little more than one a month. FBI only recognized 14 cases where a citizen who wasn't an on-duty law enforcement officer stopped an attack. The truth that Dr. Lott uncovered when he studied this issue a little more carefully should profoundly change the discussion about public violence. He found examples of attempted mass murders that the FBI either missed or ignored. According to Lott's research, ordinary citizens stopped murder 157 times. That's 35.7%. Lott also thought to ask a profound question. We can't expect ordinary citizens to defend the public when these ordinary citizens have been disarmed by law. Dr. Lott looked to see if the attack occurred in a so-called gun-free zone. Two remarkable things leapt out when you bother to ask that important question. First, Lott found that mass murderers attacked gun-free zones overwhelmingly, almost always, 98% of the time. No wonder honest citizens weren't there to stop these murders. Were disarmed by plastic signs that the murderers walked right past. Politicians and corporate risk managers create an environment full of disarmed victims. Second, armed citizens usually stop mass murders when the attacks occur in places where we can be armed. The percentage of active shootings that were stopped is 51%. In 2021, that figure rose to 58% and to a remarkable 63.5% in 2022. You did it. Ordinary people like you and I stopped 2 out of 3 mass murders where we were allowed to be present and defend our neighbors. That's almost 1,800 people we saved in that decade. And the mass media never covered it. John, what do you think?
Well, a week ago today, there was a murder on the campus of UNC Chapel Hill. A professor was murdered by one of his students. It was a gun-free zone. Obviously, it stopped nothing. The gun control industry would have you believe it was a school shooting. No, it was a targeted murder. And the hysteria is almost as if there was a mass murder on campus. One person got killed. From what I understand, one of the members of Gun Rights North Carolina, or Grassroots North Carolina, had been in that same building less than a half hour earlier, but was unarmed because he was obeying the law, a trained individual who might have been able to stop the shooter. We don't know. But he obeyed the law, so he couldn't have done it. Paul?
The big thing I got out of that was the gun-free zones. Not only do the bad guys target the gun-free zones because we can't carry there, not only are we not allowed there, we generally don't want to go. If I have a choice, and let's say there are 2 businesses, one posts no guns, the other doesn't, I'll go to the one that doesn't. I'll specifically look for places to do what I want to do where my rights are respected rather than going into a gun-free zone. So not only are when these places mark as gun-free zones, not only are they saying they don't want us there, they're putting up a huge flag, and we don't want to go there either. So, one specific example, there is a concert venue here in Sioux Falls that is a gun-free zone, and they make you do the clear plastic thing with your belongings, and just like going through TSA. There are concerts that have been there that are bands that are still active from my youth that I would love to go see. I would love to go see some of these concerts. I don't go because I'm not going to be a sheep. I'm not going to be a cattle getting herded into slaughter. That's not me. John, you got another comment. Rob, actually, you're next, man.
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask John. You used to teach on a school campus. Some students don't make the grades. Sometimes you have to give them the grades they earn. But what's that like to work on a gun-free zone where everybody knows you're disarmed? Ever weigh on you?
It didn't necessarily. I think I usually try to have like a pocket knife at the very least. I can only think of one instance where I had a disgruntled student because I called him out for cheating. He also was a football player who weighed 290 pounds, but he took it okay. So, usually the football players were some of my best students. But no, yeah.
What else you thinking? Anything else?
I did, but it kind of went out of my mind.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
Well, I have to say that, folks, if you are hearing us for the first time talk about Dr. John Lott, go check out his website, crimeresearch.org. The funny part, the real funny part is that John Lott is not necessarily, he didn't start out just as a pro-gun guy who's trying to find data to prove his point. He's an economist who found data, and then the numbers spoke to him, and so he started to do more and more work with the numbers. And he's just an amazing person who really has a great grasp on Second Amendment, crime numbers, and just the stats. He really is a statistician for the Second Amendment. crimeresearch.org.
Yep. He is his data is go-to for pro-rights advocates, because he digs deeply and gives accurate data that consistently comes, and he doesn't sugarcoat it. If the data is not so great, he'll still put it out there. But most of the data he finds is dead center on our side. Let me get a few comments in here. Spartan 6 says, if I have to carry insurance where I carry my gun, then when I go to a place that doesn't allow me to carry, should they be required to have insurance to protect me when I'm there? Well, good point.
Yes.
I don't think it'll do a whole lot of good if the damage is extremely serious, shall we say.
Paul, can I argue with you for a minute?
Yeah.
I understand. Your point is 100% spot on, meaning, well, at least I hope that money won't make my wife happy if I'm dead, but we won't go there. But the reason there are all those gun-free zones is because a corporate risk manager said it's easier for us to disarm the innocent people than say, oh, some bad guy brought a gun in here and there wasn't a little plastic sign.
Yeah.
So that law that says, fine, if you put up a plastic sign, just buy the insurance and you're good because you're liable. All of a sudden they do the math and go, give me the knife. We need to get that sign off the window.
Paul, I remembered what I was going to say. Oh, sorry.
He's retired.
You had
remember.
said something.
What's it like
That's right.
being old, Amanda? I can't remember.
You were saying something about the rock venue that you don't no longer go to because it's posted against carry. Tom Gresham has argued for years that if you go and you see a restaurant that is posted against carry, you note it, you go and eat someplace else, and send a copy of that receipt to the manager of the place you had intended to go, except that it was posted against carry. Said, I would have spent this money in your store, but you posted against carry. This is what you lost.
I love that idea. Fortunately, there are not many, other than this one concert venue that is posted. There are not many places around here that I don't go because it is posted. Now, when we go to Phoenix in a couple weeks, that's going to be a different story. We'll have to see what's posted where and what. And I will give an open, honest review of going out in Phoenix when we get back. But let's face it, Sioux Falls we've got a couple 100,000 people. Phoenix, every year, it used to be that Phoenix and San Diego would swap places twice a year for the sixth most populous city in the nation. Phoenix would be more populated in the winter, San Diego in the summer. So,
Yep.
They're not even close to the same as Sioux Falls. So, going to be more gun-free zones coming up in Phoenix, and I'll give an honest report of where I went and where I didn't go when I get back. Let's go ahead. Why don't we go ahead to the next story here? Permitless concealed carry takes effect in Nebraska after passing the legislature early this spring. The bill State Senator Tom Brewer has long fought for will take effect on Saturday, or did take effect on Saturday. The new law removes the requirement that gun owners who want to conceal carry in Nebraska get a permit. Two certified handgun permit instructors, 3 News Now, reached on Thursday, support the law, but urge gun owners to still seek training that was required by the gun permit process. Gun owner and real estate agent Kurt Geschwinder is one of those instructors. Is a quote from him. I don't believe it's a state's job or my job to tell people what they should or shouldn't do as long as they don't harm other people. It's a constitutional right, but I think a person who's going to carry a firearm should have some sort of training before they go out in the street with the firearm. He's telling students who say they don't need the permit to renew their permit anyway. It proves that you've taken the course, you've gotten some basic instruction. You don't necessarily have to take the state one, although that's the most comprehensive one that I'm aware of. I'm going to stop right there. I'll continue in a second. He's a horrible trainer if the most comprehensive training he knows of is the state-sponsored training. He's an awful trainer. Run away. I know much better training than any state-level course out there. Continuing beyond responsible gun ownership, he says there's another reason some Nebraska gun owners may choose to get a permit. Other states that require permits will likely recognize Nebraska's permit, which will be still offered from the state. That's a good point. However, don't get a Nebraska permit and think that New York will likely recognize the Nebraska permit. They won't. Don't think California will likely recognize the permit. They won't. No states that are anti-gun are going to recognize the Nebraska permit. Check out handgunlaw.us to be sure of where your permit is good. Rob, you're up first in comments. What do you think, man?
Well, first, there's the good news. Mandatory instruction is a tax. If you get rid of taxes, you get more of something. So more people will carry because we're not taxing it anymore. Also, more people will seek firearms training because they have more money to spend now that they're not being taxed. Other good news, you and your firearms instructor can select the training that fits your needs. What you most need to know first. By the way, there's more you probably want to know later. John, Amanda, what do you think?
Well, I don't think there's any one of us here that would not say that you need to get training. We do. The other thing I would point out, in any of the states that have permitless carry, it could be to your advantage to go ahead and get a permit anyway, so that you can carry in other states that would recognize your permit. So if you get a permit from anywhere, you can come to North Carolina because we recognize everyone's permits. We're not like California. We like you. Come to us, but leave your politics behind if they're liberal. Well, that's all we're saying, or if you're anti-gun. But I could see the point on getting it just so that you can have it if you travel out of state. If you don't travel out of state, don't bother. But get training. Amanda?
I feel for that instructor who was interviewed. I really do, because he was just kind of going along, doing his own thing, teaching the class, talking to people, teaching the class, and then there's a reporter and he went, "Oh!" and he choked. And everything that came out of his mouth, I am absolutely sure that later on he was like, I could have done better. I should have done my homework. I should have known these things. I should have looked at this. I should have looked that up. I think that he was stuck right there with a microphone in front of his face. And I feel for him, because there's times when you're trying to do prep for an interview, and that is not an easy thing to do. And so I feel for him. We'll just not assume that he's an oaf, though that's how he came. He stumbled. We'll just say he stumbled.
Big rock
John?
that made him stumble, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Amanda, and I'd also say we don't know how the rest of the interview went. We don't know how it was edited. And we don't know what they tried to select to make him look bad. And that was this quote that was taken. Because they're looking for a little tiny bit, even though the whole interview could be 1 hour long, and they'll take 15 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
So always have your own tape recorder.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, you know, the problem is, even if he has his own tape recorder, we're never going to hear it. So the thing that happens is, if you're very careful about what you say, you cannot be slice and dice edited and misquoted. So
Correct.
know your stuff prior to going in front of a camera, because it will bite you in the behind.
I'm going to put out a direct message to this trainer, Kurt Geschwender, or Geschwender. If you want to come on and explain and clarify, I will give you an open mic anytime. And you don't even necessarily have to use video. We can bring you in on an audio-only line. But come on, if you want to explain these comments and what you maybe said afterwards or should have said, open invitation, man. Let me get a couple comments in here real quick. Warsaw Patriot says, John, I have a better vision and dream. Don't let politics, a state's flag, and other people's thinking define yourself. We're all freedom-loving Americans, and every citizen deserves to be, and he followed up with, treated equal as gun owners. And one more, he said, and every state needs to treat every citizen with respect. We're getting on. We're getting on to I have a dream category of the famous quote by God, my brain is freezing right now.
Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting really close there. We haven't achieved Dr. King's dream yet. We are a lot closer than the media would allow you to believe, but we're still not quite there, and we're 50 years on from that. So let's see here. And yes, he says, I bet you can agree, Paul. I do. I absolutely do. I would love for everybody to be treated with respect by not only by the state but by all citizens. I would love there to be true freedom, and there's just at this point not. So, John, we got some good news out of D.C. You want to take this one?
Yeah, the District of Columbia has settled a class action lawsuit filed by 6 gun owners who were arrested in our nation's capital for violating gun control laws that have since been struck down by the courts. D.C. agreed to pay millions of dollars to plaintiffs and to their attorneys for infringing on their Second Amendment rights. The settlement received preliminary approval from a federal judge on Wednesday, with the district agreeing to fork over a total of $5.1 million. Each of the 6 named plaintiffs will receive $50,000 under the terms of the agreement, with a larger class of affected gun owners divvying up several million dollars between them. U.S. District Court Judge Royce Lamberth gave preliminary approval to the settlement agreement on Monday following years of litigation. He had previously ruled in September 2021 that D.C. arrested, jailed, prosecuted, and seized guns from 6 people based on an unconstitutional set of laws and violated their Second Amendment rights. The laws, a ban on carrying handguns outside the home, and others that effectively ban non-residents from carrying guns at all in D.C., have since been struck down in federal court. They were part of a gun control regime that completely banned carrying handguns in public, Lamberth wrote in his 2021 ruling. Including those arrested included the lead plaintiff, Maggie Smith, who was a nurse from North Carolina. She got pulled over in a routine stop in 2014, according to court documents. She had no criminal record, and she informed police that her car contained a pistol that was licensed in her home state. Sure, carry, we don't license, but for which police promptly arrested her, seizing her gun and taking her to jail where she stayed overnight. In another case, Gerard Casagnol, a Maryland resident, was driving home from his job in Northern Virginia when he got pulled over in the district. When police asked whether he had a gun in the vehicle, he said yes, giving police the combination to the locked safe where he kept it. He spent 2 nights in jail on gun charges. Both cases had the charges dropped after the ruling in Palmer, but for some the damage was done. For example, Casagnol lost his job after his arrest. Another plaintiff had his top secret security clearance placed under review. D.C. argued at the time that the arrestees should have done their research about D.C. gun laws or attempt to license them before driving through the district with guns. Lamberth found that these actions would have been futile. There were no actions that the plaintiffs could have taken during the time period in question that would have allowed them to carry a gun for self-defense in the District of Columbia. Rob?
Well, the money quote was, the judge recognized that it was not possible for the plaintiffs to obey the law.
Yep.
Right? Okay. Also, that was $1.9 million for the lawyers, $50,000 for the named plaintiffs, and only $1,000 each for the thousands of other class action plaintiffs. This will not be the last class action lawsuit filed against D.C. Can't be, not with that math.
But I think that math is very similar to a lot of other class action lawsuits. That seems to be the typical thing. And but we do nothing but fill out a piece of paper, and the lawyers, they do risk everything and spend their time. But I don't know at what point, obviously the reward is worth the risk because they keep doing it. But yeah. There's that. When I head to DC, I park in Virginia and Uber.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
The DC, going back to the gun-free zone discussion, DC is one place I would love to visit. I just haven't because the gun laws there are draconian. And so, will I in the future? I'm going to give the Supreme Court several more years to work things out before DC goes on to my I'm going to visit my visit list. And for the same reason it was talked, I don't want to give DC my money, my vacation money, when they're behaving badly. I'd rather go to a place that welcomes me and my money rather than DC who says you are wrong think, we don't want you here. Rob, what do you think, man?
If he treated DC as a state, then by a factor of 2, it would be the state with the highest murder rate. That's not the kind of exceptionalism we had in mind.
No.
Are we going to talk about this special session in Tennessee? Because Amanda's got our eye on the street reporter for this.
Well, let's do this. I don't necessarily think we have to read the story because Amanda was there. Amanda, tell us about Tennessee and tell us the good news is, and we reported this previously, nothing happened in Tennessee. That's the good news. You want to tell us about it?
It was the 3 days that nothing happened. So the DC project was large and in charge there. We showed up, we had a press release, a press conference actually, about 50 people in teal were there, and that was really good. I had personally had a conversation with the Senate Majority Leader who told me that the Governor Bill Lee had asked for red flags, and oh, by the way, they have found out that people are pushing back against red flags, so they've renamed it ERPO, or Extreme Risk Protection Orders. And they're like, it has nothing to do with red flag. It's just exactly the same thing. It just doesn't have the color red in its title. So the governor had asked for it, had asked for the special session. They did hold the special session, and no laws were passed. The other part that was very interesting was that we lost several gals who were supposed to come and speak with us because the news was losing their minds, and there was lots of verbiage about the fact that they expected them to bus in the demanding mommies, and they expected a lot of stuff. They canceled all vacations from the state police, brought them in, and funny enough, there were more police than there were protesters. I mean, probably on a 2-to-1 ratio, there were police everywhere. And the protesters, the demanding mommies, did not show up in force.
That reminds me of the last NRA show I went to in Houston, and there were anti-gun protesters there. I have pictures of them. The police lined the street from where the NRA show was to where the protesters were set up. And it was at times hard to get pictures of the protesters because the police and their horses and their vehicles and everything were in between there and the NRA show. So yeah, I hate to call it fake. I am going to call it fake because they have to pay these people in a lot of cases to protest and then bus them in and make sure every little thing of theirs is taken care of to get them to come protest, and then when the buses go away, so do the protesters.
Much ado about nothing. Yeah, it was pretty interesting, and but the police were very polite to us, and there's some rules inside, not inside the Capitol, and then there's rules inside the offices, the Senate legislative offices, and the size of signs and all kinds of stuff. You're not allowed to take a Sharpie in because somebody
You
has
write graffiti?
graffitied that somebody has in the past graffitied inside the offices, and so they wouldn't. And you were only allowed to take in signs that were 8.5 by 11. Well, my signs were bigger than that, so I needed to take scissors and cut them. Except I wasn't allowed to have scissors. So I went in the building and I got scissors, but then when I went back out to cut them, I couldn't take the scissors back in. So the guy who owned the scissors was going to lose the scissors. So I had to have a scissor escort so that he worked in the office, so he was allowed to have scissors. So he came with me. I cut the stuff. He took the scissors. It was
a circus.
You just smiled and said, okay, fine. There's that. So, but it was, oh, I have one other thing that was kind of cool. We were walking in, because this was in Nashville. So later Monday night, we were then walking the strip in Nashville. And there were two of us, and we were each armed. And since I was not wearing clothing that was structurally sound enough to hold, it didn't have belt loops and it just couldn't hold up a gun. I have the tiniest gun tote in Mama's purse, and I had the gun in there, and I had a knife in my pants, and the other gal was wearing a corset, and she had her gun on her corset. So we walked into a place because it's perfectly legal to be inside the bars carrying a gun. It's just you're just not allowed to drink. So we go in and we get to about the third one. They wave Di through, and then they say to me, "I need to check your bag." So Di spins back around. She's like, "What are you checking it for?" And he said, "Well, guns or knives or such." And she said, "We have those." and
How many do you need?
And the look on his face was priceless. And so finally we had to we were like, okay, we get it. We'll just move on. But yeah, it wasn't just yeah or no. It was yeah, we have those. So, and yeah, it could have been a drive-by cut and pasting. You're right. Yeah. It was no Sharpies, no scissors. I was gonna run with those scissors, and go rogue.
I imagine thinking back to my school years when I was in kindergarten, we got these scissors that had the rounded ends, and
yes.
Oh, here, the last part I didn't tell you about that building. That building, you were allowed to be armed as long as you had a permit. Okay, so we had guns in the building. We weren't allowed to have scissors.
Oh, oh, I love you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Amanda, that's an article. That's it. Okay, I got to call you tomorrow. We're going to talk. Just when you thought politicians would solve your problems, you can bring guns in this building, but no scissors.
And no signs more than 8.5 by 11. Did they have a tape measure there to measure your sign?
They gave me another piece of paper to use as the template to cut my sign, but yes. And then I cut one in half, and he's like, "No, if you glue it back together or tape it back together inside the building, we will throw you out."
Oh, geez.
Okay. No drive-by tapings either.
All right. Let me get a couple more. Brooke says, yes, no running with scissors. Dana followed that up with just fast walking with scissors. And if you've ever been around somewhere and have met Amanda personally, she can lay down a pace while walking. So,
Places to be.
Yeah, exactly. I want to skip down one story. Rob, you want to, because we've got to get to this one. Let's talk about the ATF rule, or the proposed ATF rule.
Is this Biden's proposed rule to eliminate gun sales?
Yep.
Yeah, President Joe and the Department of Justice announced a proposed rule to change who will need an FFL, Federal Firearms License, to sell firearms. The long-awaited rule was hailed by, I know, you're shocked, anti-gun groups like Everytown, Giffords, Brady, as a way of closing the so-called gun show loophole and internet loophole. Those anti-gun organizations claimed, well, this is an important step toward universal background checks. Look, that's been a centerpiece of the Biden administration anti-gun policy since before he was elected. So when you meet someone who says they're a pro-gun Democrat, say, yeah, explain this to me. The proposed rule is powered by the bipartisan so-called Safer Guns Act. That was the law championed by Chris Murphy from Connecticut, and, yeah, Rhino John Cornyn from Texas. Texans, you have some explaining to do. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act changed the law's wording to describe who the federal government could consider a gun dealer. The bill altered the language of Section 921A, Title 18, blah, blah, blah. It changed what was defined as someone engaged in the business of selling guns. So anybody who would earn a profit by selling a gun was now in the business. Okay, the Biden administration is exploiting that change through the upcoming rule. Look, you could still sell your firearms through an FFL. If you sold a lot of them through that FFL, I don't know. That's ambiguous. But person-to-person transfers now, no, can't do it. The term to predominantly earn a profit means that the intent underlying the sale or disposition is predominantly one of obtaining pecuniary gain, that's monetary gain, as opposed to other interests, such as improving or liquidating personal firearms collections. Again, that proof of profit should not be required as to a person who engages in the regular and repetitive purchase or disposition of firearms. Look, the criminals are not worried about this. This is only a way to harass law-abiding gun owners. Unlicensed seller who sell through online auctions, you know, the one where, hi, anybody want this? Okay, we'll send it to your FFL. No, to do so, now I would have to get an FFL. These websites don't sell firearms and currently do not have to get an FFL. In addition, it clarifies the term dealer, including how that term applies to auctioneers, and defines the term responsible person. These changes would assist persons in understanding where they are required to have a license to deal with firearms. John, talk to me.
Well, some of the examples ATF gives you to say that you are a dealer are absolutely ridiculous. One of the ones that I saw was, if you put a price tag on a gun that you are selling at a gun show, well, then you need to have a license to sell it. I mean, I go to gun shows at least 5 times yearly to man the Grassroots North Carolina booth, and I see many people selling private guns with a flag on a dowel outside of the barrel with the price saying like 300, 400, whatever. And these guys are not dealers. They're just a guy either thinning the herd, thinning out their collection. They're selling because they need cash to pay for their kids' braces or some medical stuff, or they're just getting old and they can't hunt anymore, so they don't need, a 30-inch shotgun barrel for home protection. They've got, maybe a pistol or something. So they're thinning it out. These people are not dealers. Yet, I think this bill, the way this interpretation is structured, it would classify them as dealers. Amanda?
Well, I think there was a couple interesting things in there. One is that they said that if you sell multiples of the same gun, then that would make you a dealer. I train with a guy that when he buys a gun, he buys two, because if you have one, you have none. If you have two, you have one. That kind of a thing. And when he likes them, he keeps them, and when he doesn't like them, he sells them both. Does that make him a dealer? Don't know. I have in my possession, because one of the other things they said was if you sell a gun in its original packaging. I have Ruger 357s from 1955, 1956 that I have not only the original packaging plus the bag, the VCI bag that it went in, and the shipping carton that also went with it. That's provenance. It all goes together as part of a collector, but there's that. But I think that the big thing that came out of this, that in order for them to push this whole mess through, or try to push this whole mess through, they pretty much admitted that the gun show loophole that they've been touting for years and years and years isn't really a loophole, because they're like, yeah, if you're at a gun show and you have a dealer's license, you have to use the dealer's license. But they had been saying for years that it was dealers going to the gun show and selling things off the books and behind, so they had to admit that the gun show loophole was a lie in order to rename it the gun show loophole.
If you are going to make a pecuniary, I think is the word they use, that's a really big word that not many people know. If you're going to make a financial gain from this, if my dad in 1980 gave me a gun and I want to sell that thing, do I have to sell it for 1980 prices, not including inflation, or do I have to now go get an FFL? And should I decide to go get an FFL, well, that means I can now have items shipped to my home. I'll just use my FFL. That means I can get the fun switch on guns that I order depending on the class of FFL I get.
But you can't get an FFL in most residential addresses. That's the other part, is that, so they're going to tell you you have to get an FFL, and then they're going to tell you that you can't have one.
Yeah. And Warsaw Patriot had a comment, and John, you and I had a conversation pre-show. This hits on that. Warsaw Patriot says, I'd like to address the BATF is trying to limit people on gunpowder on how much they reload with another ruling. John, you want to get into that one?
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, ATF is saying its own. You're supposed to report to local authorities what explosives you have and about the magazine. The magazine they mean there is where it's stored, in the old-fashioned sense of the word, not something from Magpul. However, I mean, you're thinking, well, okay, dynamite, C4 explosive, nitroglycerin. But if you look, black powder, if you look actually at what ATF has defined as an explosive back in 2013 and this year alone, smokeless powder is defined as an explosive, even though it's a propellant and not an explosive. So rather than somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 people impacted, you could have more like 5 million, 10,000 people. All the reloaders are going to be impacted. But they'll tell you that, oh, no, we don't mean that. Yeah, but that's not how what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Unintended consequences, I think, is where we're going here.
Right.
The hell with Chevron.
I'm telling you, when you say C4 though, my head goes right back to the joke about, if we have silly putty, we have to have serious putty. And somebody says we do. C4.
All right. Got a lot of comments coming in about this proposed rule change. Brooke says, I always buy my competition guns in pairs. We try not to sell them. My hubby says we are collectors. Okay, I'll buy that.
16, you're a super user.
On the other hand, I have guns that are very similar. If I look closely enough, they're not identical. They don't have the same manufacturer's manufacturing number. So, no, I don't have two of the same gun.
Where this could get dangerous is if you have, let's say you have the same amount of AR-15s I have.
You mean one?
No. Oh, no. And you want to get rid of a few of them because you've got, I don't know, a trip to Phoenix coming up that you want to cover. If I have one that I sell that is a FN and one that I sell that is trying to pull a random manufacturer out of my head, a Smith & Wesson. They're both AR-15s. Is that multiple instances of the same gun?
I don't
you
think
need
so.
a lawyer to sort it out? Oh, wow.
Is this Chevy and a Ford the same thing? They're both cars. They could both be red. They could both be black.
Yeah, you're right there. Let me get another comment in here from Warsaw Patriot. What they're doing is making your rights into a crime, giving everything to the state total control. And a couple more here. Everyone, this is Spartan 6. Everyone knows what this is. It's a way to scare people into thinking they cannot sell firearms from their own collection and trying to arrest them if they do. And hope.
This actually tosses back that bill that California was trying to pass, where it said that if you were buying a gun or selling a gun, that you had to sign a document that says that you have looked at every firearm that you own and can attest to the fact that they are still in your possession and that you have seen them and touched them and verified them in the last 30 days. Yet, at the same time, they told then the police departments that they weren't allowed to sell their guns. They had to store them somewhere. So we were having this whole thing about, gun jails where they had to store them, and then before the buyer could buy more guns for the police, he had to verify that every gun that was still in his possession was still in the gun jail. But this is that kind of same thing. I mean, there are some of us who actually do now and then sell a gun. There's some of us who have never sold one, and the pile just gets bigger and deeper and wider. We're not saying who. But
there's some of us who have sold guns in the past and have vowed never to do it again.
Right. From my cold, dead hands.
Yes, I do not often. It's a matter of fact, I trade guns in. I do not generally sell them, and because I want a better version is usually what happens. And so
upgrade.
Yes. I don't know that this will directly affect me other than infringing on my rights, and in that way it does directly affect me. Dana says, the courts have struck down laws that had requirements that could not be met. Just going back to our previous story about D.C., where the judge said there was no way to be legal for these people. There's an example there. Yes, Dana, but we shouldn't have to have the courts go and strike these things down. And get one from Brooke. When asked, how many guns do you own? My answer is always more than one.
When somebody asks me that question, my answer is, how much money's in your 401k?
Yes. Yes.
They immediately kind of lock up and say, "That's rude," and I'm like, "Yep."
Exactly.
Not as many as I'm going to have in a week. You know. Spartan 6 says to Brooke, a better answer to that question is not enough. I like that. All right. Another answer could be come back with a warrant. I mean, you know, because no, personally, it's very rare somebody asks me that question, and I usually just, you know, almost enough or something like that. I don't ever give out exact, even on the air to you folks. Most of you people that are watching right now are friends, and I don't give out specific numbers ever, ever, ever. Do I have ARs? Yes, I do. Do I have more than one? Yes, I do. Do I have handguns? I have a lot more than one handgun. Do I have shotguns? Absolutely. I'm not gonna give out specific numbers. Let's do this, guys. We are super, super, super long on news. Let's step aside to break. We've got 3 DGU stories to cover, and we'll get to those right after we hear from the Complete Combatant. Right back. And by the way, Amanda got to visit these folks, and I'm jealous. So we're going to hear from Complete Combatant. We'll be right back right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
All right, this is the defensive gun use of the Polite Society podcast, presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information and entertainment only, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations, although they should be. Rob, you want to take us to Shreveport, man? That's down in your neck of the woods.
It's the same state. 3 armed men decided a vape shop would be a good choice of target for them to get a quick buck. The 3 entered the shop. It was just before 5 p.m. on Saturday. They began their holdup of the store, and at one point, 2 of the 3 jumped the counter. They took a handgun and other items from the clerk. This sounds bad. While this was happening, though, 2 customers managed to escape the store. They went to their vehicle. They armed themselves. They engaged the trio of robbers as they left the business. 2 of the robbers, aged 18 and 19, were shot and, surprised, later succumbed to their injuries. The 3rd man ran. He hasn't been identified by authorities. Police who arrived for the report of the robbery and then shots fired found one of the 2 outside the business and the other dead inside. The 2 customers did not stick around to talk to police. It's questionable whether they would be charged or not. Possibly. Are they prohibited persons? We don't know. Several days after the incident, protesters gathered outside the Cato Parish District Attorney's office. They're asking why. Who are you protesting? The case is still in the hands of the police department. The 2 deceased criminals had been scheduled to appear in court for a previous robbery. They were out on bail. What do you think?
I'm going to say this. Please, 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 pogo. And just because you're carrying doesn't give you a talisman where you're going to be safe and everything's going to be good. Earlier in this story, the person working at the bait shop or the vape shop was carrying, and they took his gun away. That screams at me no training. Two guys ran out to their car to get firearms and engage the bad guys as they left. So, yeah, if they could have engaged quicker if they were carrying on their body, but Rob brought up a great point. Maybe they were prohibited persons. I don't know. Anybody else want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, let's go ahead, Amanda. Let's talk about best practice.
Well, I really want to kind of keep an eye on this because I want to know what they're protesting. Are they protesting the dead guys? Are they protesting the guys weren't carrying in the first place? Or that the guys didn't stick around? That they don't know who the heroes are? I don't know.
Rob, what do you think,
Inquiring minds.
Yeah, inquiring minds. Normally, we would tell people if the bad guys are running away, there's not an immediate lethal threat, let them go. Mm-hmm. Now, you're outside, you've got guns, they're moving toward you, you say, I'm armed. In fact, you can have a gun in Louisiana, you can open carry. That gun can be in your hand at the low ready. If they reach for a firearm, you'd say, oh my, a felon in the commission of a crime and now is reaching for a firearm? Ooh, that could be a lethal threat. Game over. Meaning you don't have to disappear, but shooting them as they run, that's another question.
Well, the story doesn't say whether they were shot in the front or in the back or, so, and one was still in the building, so there's all that. But what you do bring up brings to question the dude inside the vape shop originally. Was he open carrying? You see that in a lot of gun shops where they believe that if they're showing you their gun that they're all tough and duded out and you'll just believe that they're skilled and capable. I'd rather say we've got that. But
we've got that. How many do you need? Right.
Yeah. That what Amanda just brought up brings to mind the Shooter's Grill, which is a famous restaurant in Rifle, Colorado, owned by Lauren Boebert, who is now the congressman from that district in Colorado. Been there 3 or 4 times when we are going to and from the gun rights policy conference when it's in the Southwest, because that's kind of the route from Sioux Falls to the Southwest goes on 70 through Rifle, Colorado. I got to do this quick here. There we go. So I had a phone call coming in, and so we're going to be cutting this broadcast short because that was from my real boss, Susan, who is just coming back from work. So I need to find out what's going on. But I've been there. I've been there when they're open carrying, and look, it's fairly obvious that on a lot of the waitresses there, the guns are a decoration.
Shtick.
Exactly, Amanda. It's a shtick. They're open carrying. Do they know how to use them? Yeah, from their body posture, from the way they carry themselves, I kind of doubt it. Would I rob the place? Not on your life. But it's yeah. If this guy was open carrying in this vape shop, I think that it's just a don't rob me thing that didn't work. Mm-hmm. John, do you want to take us to Maine?
Yeah, and it's actually Maine, New York, the town of Maine. At 10 p.m., officers from Broome County Sheriff's Office responded to a home in Maine, New York. They found a homeowner who reported that a masked man had attempted to gain entry into his home. The homeowner exchanged gunfire in front of his home with the suspect. He fired 2 shots while the home invader fired 8 in exchange. Eventually, the criminal fled the area prior to deputies arriving. Detectives at the scene to assist the investigation suspected the suspect sustained a gunshot wound in the shootout.
Say that 5 times fast.
Exactly. Fortunately, the homeowner was untouched. Police believe the home was specifically targeted. They determined the 2 Binghamton residents, 21 and 31, had gone to the home with handguns in an attempt to burglarize the home. One of the 2 received a gunshot wound to the leg and was treated at a hospital. They were charged with attempted murder in the 2nd degree, attempted burglary in the 1st degree, and criminal use of a firearm in the 1st degree. A lot of degrees there.
Yes.
It's summertime.
Well, and none of the degrees are an educational, what am I trying to say? An educational achievement.
Well, now they are, because they learned something. It's one of those is, that around and find out, he found out.
Yeah.
2 shots, one of them connected. So at least decent marksmanship on the homeowner. Bad guy 8, none of them connected. So yeah.
What I do wonder about, we were talking. Go ahead, Rob.
No, go ahead, John, please.
I was going to say, when I'm reading in the story, he was outside the home. And I know New York does not have officially a castle doctrine, but it does have common law. What do they count as your residence? Massachusetts, it would be strictly the building itself, not even including the porch, whereas New York may include what they call the appurtenances, and the front yard may be perfectly legal to be outside and to protect your home. We don't know. I don't know. I'm sure an expert on New York self-defense law would know. Rob?
This story is more common than we think. When we look at some recent surveys, we find that most people defend themselves at home, but not in their home. It's in the surrounding property. And that may simply be somebody knocks on the door, you open and go outside. What is this? What's the problem? Or it's when they arrive or leave in their vehicle. Many people don't have a garage. Maybe the car is parked on the street.
Yeah. Anything more on this one, or should we go to the final one in Houston? And this is not, and let me get a comment up here. I know it, yeah, there it is. Dana says, well, one isn't exactly a DGU. And yeah, this last one's not technically a DGU, but it'll give us stuff to talk about. You want to take this last one, Rob?
Yeah, we've heard of children protecting parents and grandparents with guns. Well, those children had monitored access to those firearms. Now, we've also heard examples of why strict, quote, safe storage isn't always the best idea. In this case, it was a 10-year-old girl who witnessed her father assaulting her mother. The young girl grabbed what she could to stop the attack. In this case, she grabbed a knife. She stabbed her father in the leg. He was transported to the hospital in fair condition. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez said this was an awful situation for a 10-year-old little girl to have to witness and live through. Children who witness the abuse of their parents are impacted severely. The father is facing a misdemeanor charge of assaulting a family member. Also, a protection order was filed to prevent him from reaching out to the mother. It's not clear whether either the mother or child were injured. By the way, often in a case like this, if there's a physical attack in front of a child, that alone is considered child endangerment.
Mm-hmm.
comments, y'all?
It's one of the, and we get into these every once in a while in defensive gun uses. This is a horrific scenario, and I'm going to say if a 10-year-old can be trusted with a knife and can utilize a knife like in this situation, it may be time to think about allowing that child supervised to begin to learn about guns. I don't think this is exactly probably a gun household, a household that has guns in it. It could have been, but I've had people as young as 6 that I've helped to take their first shots. And I just, that's where I kind of wanted to go with this one when I seen it, is that you can be a lot younger than 21 years old, which is where the Biden administration wants you to start thinking about maybe utilizing firearms. You can be a lot younger than that and effectively use them.
Well, I think that the thing that comes to mind for me is how horrific the attack had to be. I mean, because you think about the fact that, you know, your parents, how do you pick one parent over another parent in something like this? So the attack either had to have been repetitive to where she'd consciously already made a decision, or it had to be so horrific that she was like, I have to do something, anything to stop this. And your heart just goes out for this poor little girl.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's do this. We've got one more break we've got to get to. We're going to hear from JPFO. Then when we come back, we'll talk about what each of us have been doing with our media, and we'll start shutting the show down. We'll be right back for our final segment right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
All right, we are back. This is the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. This segment, we normally talk about what we've been doing with our media. Rob, I'm going to lead it off with you, dude. What's been going on at Slowfax, and is there anything else you want to talk about?
We live in a media-driven culture. We also have government agencies putting out biased reports, basically knowingly lying to the media, to the American people, to serve their political masters. It's rare that the media ever questions those agency reports. Now, that wouldn't matter, but many of us confuse media headlines with facts. Come on. I've seen people on Facebook say that there were hundreds of mass shootings this year and that our children aren't safe in school because of it. They're wrong. What I don't hear people say on Facebook is that honest citizens like you stop mass murder most of the time. Let me ask a slightly different question. This is not a philosophy class, but hear it that way. If an ordinary citizen stops mass murder and the mainstream media refuses to report it, did it really happen? Well, according to the FBI, the answer is almost always no. That article is called New Data Says You Stopped Mass Murder Most of the Time. My articles are up at Slowfax, at Clash Daily, and at AmmoLand. John, what's new at your blog? No lawyers, only guns and men.
Last Monday, before we went on the air, there was a murder on the campus of UNC Chapel Hill. I refused to call it a school shooting, as it was a disgruntled 34-year-old Chinese grad student who killed his advisor. This is not the first time something like this has happened. Nonetheless, the gun control lobby immediately tried to make it about the repeal of North Carolina's racist pistol purchase permit. As of now, we still do not know how the killer obtained his firearm because the firearm has not been recovered. Having attended grad school at Carolina for 3+ years, I am actually kind of disgusted by the wailing and gnashing of teeth response of many students that, "Oh, this is horrible. We were scared." Get over yourselves. Moving on, if you read the DOJ's release on the new rule regarding FFLs, you could not help but think, what a bunch of hypocrites. They say they want to partner with gun dealers on crime prevention, yet they are doing everything possible in their power to put them out of business. Finally, the mystery NRA lawsuit against Ackerman McQueen is no longer a mystery. The NRA is alleging breach of contract because they got sued by Tony Macris's Under Wild Skies and are blaming ACMAC even though they are separate owned companies. The key was that Macris worked for Ackerman McQueen and the Mercury Group, but he owned another company. I'm not... In my humble opinion, it looks just like another attempt by the NRA's lawyers, Brewer and Associates, to make more money. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
All right. Amanda, you just finished up a fantastic show yesterday. Go ahead and plug Eye on the Target Radio and anything else you want to cover.
Well, every Sunday night from 5 to 7 p.m., and we are on OpsLens, we are podcast, and we are live with the show on terrestrial radio, Eye on the Target Radio. And that's pretty... I don't do anything else. That's it.
You don't have time to do anything else.
Well,
Sorry. Sarcasm.
Yeah, I'm going to say Amanda, she does one thing in media. She does it incredibly well, but the reason she's here is there's so much more that she does that I'm amazed she has time to get on the radio from 5 to 7 on Sunday because, there's only 24 hours a day. So, Amanda, when was the last time you slept? Because I don't think you can.
No, I do. I'm living my best life, Paul. I mean, I get to be places with really cool people doing great stuff to defend the Second Amendment, and then I get to talk about it. So, what's not to love about that?
I'm gonna reach back to our friend Charlie Cook, who's a staff member here and on the air here a lot. Charlie often says, I'm just trying to keep up. There is no keeping up with Amanda. It's just not possible. So that's going to do it.
Keeping up with Amanda could kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that wraps up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. So for Amy, Dana, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, Carrie Ann, and Rob...
Until next time.
Stay safe.
And be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, that wraps up the recording. We are no longer recording. We still are live on Facebook, YouTube, and other places. I'm going to shut this down in just a second, but I was just thinking that as that outro was, which is what it's called, was playing, the music I chose for the Polite Society podcast, I absolutely, the guitar is good. what I love about that is the drums. That is incredibly difficult to do what that drummer did. And boy, I played drums as a kid. I long enough to learn that I didn't have any really good talent with it, and so wasn't going to go anywhere and went on to other things. But that those drums in that song, man, that's an excellent drummer. All right, let's. Anything as we're going out? Anything we want to add, guys? All right, do come join us next week. We have one more week. We're going to be doing Polite Society podcast, and then we're going to be shutting down so I can get down to Phoenix and break down all the studio equipment, get down to Phoenix, do broadcasting. Next Monday night we will be live. Then the next 2 or 3 Monday nights, well, at the very least the next 2 Monday nights, we're going to be off the air. One for me to get down to Phoenix, one for me to get back from Phoenix. So do come join us next Monday night. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you